basic spelling and grammar. Grammarly Premium, on the other hand, provides in-depth writing feedback to help you be more clear and concise, and it even gives vocabulary and formatting suggestions. What I love about Grammarly is it works almost everywhere. It's so helpful for me because you can read your paper like 20 times, but
It's great to be with you. It is so great to be with you. And, I can finally answer. When I arrive, there's always one question that everybody asks. They ask me the same question, and now I can answer it. They always say, "Where's Sister Betty?"
Hi, Rex.
Hi, how are you?
Great. Thanks for joining a little early so we can fix things. Hi, Mike.
How are you this morning?
How are we appearing in Facebook? Are we projecting on Facebook already, Mike?
Hindi ba, sir? Hindi pa kami co-host ni Randy. Nag-chat ako.
Alright. But can you see us on Facebook?
Hindi ba, sir?
Parang may nakalagay na live na. Ano yun? Saan
Meron
yun?
na
Sa video yun?
Alright.
I'm Joel Sarsaba, and I started my business way back in 2008. When I started my business, it was really a hardship.
Okay na?
Okay.
Higit ko na.
How are you doing, Rex?
Good. How are you doing?
Doing very well. We're excited about this. So you're set for your scope meeting on that's early October, I think.
If that works, late September, early October, we can
Yeah.
tune those dates.
Yeah, well, that works for us. We'll make it work. We'll make it work.
Yeah.
So I know that there's a few already who are intending to go with you. So
Yeah, it sounded like there was yeah.
okay, Randy, are we doing well on Facebook? So
Yes,
we have
sir.
1 minute.
Naka-live na po tayo, sir, and we're ready.
All right. Good morning to all our friends in the academy, and of course, good evening to Rex. What time is it where you are, Rex?
7 p.m.
7 p.m. I know are you in Salt Lake or where are you at right now?
St. George, down on the
George.
Arizona
Oh,
border.
yeah. Okay, yeah. So far away.
Yeah.
How far is St. George from Salt Lake?
Probably 4.5 hours. We measure in hours, so I don't know, kilometers. Let's see.
Yeah.
I don't really know.
Yeah, if it's 4 hours fast driving from Salt Lake to St. George, then that's going to be maybe double the time in the Philippines.
Yeah.
I would think that's about what, 600, maybe 400 kilometers. I
Yeah,
guess.
probably about 400 kilometers.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So anyway, we're glad and excited to have you and talk about the making of a technology entrepreneur. This is our very first podcast for the year with our friend entrepreneurs, to inspire our fellow academy alumni in the Philippines so that they can also reflect on their own personal journey and hopefully inspire them further as they grow their businesses or start and even grow their businesses. So to our friends, we are doing this podcast twice a month. So this is the first for the year. and then we'll have another two on February. Typically, we will invite a local entrepreneur for this interview, and then another friend from different parts of the world, I guess, entrepreneurs who also share their journey. So, well, today we're so blessed because we have Brother Rex Hale. He's actually a former missionary here in the Philippines, Davao Mission. So we'll ask Rex to give us a little introduction about himself, his business experience, his church experience, maybe a little bit about his Davao Mission experience. So Rex, go ahead.
So I served in Davao 1990 to 1992 with President Gapis.
Mhm.
So yeah, so maayong buntag tell you in Davao. From magandang umaga to everybody else.
Wow, that would be awesome.
After my mission, I went to Brigham Young University. I'd attended for a year or two before my mission. That's where I met my wife, Kari. And I started working in technology. My schooling was in computer science. So I started working in technology for a couple of technology companies here in Utah County, Intel and Novell. And then I realized that I wanted to do my own thing. I wanted to control my own hours. I was working a lot of really long hours for other businesses, and I wanted to control my own schedule. So I studied what I could of starting a business, of writing a business plan, of trying to figure out how I could do this. This was while I was still working for Novell. But I realized that I needed to be able to focus on that. In order to start a business, I need to focus on the work of building a business. I read a number of books that really helped me to realize that this is what I wanted to do. So I started my first business, in the late 1990s.
Mhm. What was that?
Yeah.
What was your very first venture? Tell us about that.
Well, the very first one after being an adult, because I had little side hustles. We call them side hustles. When I was young, raising chickens, selling eggs, things like that. But after being an adult, my first side hustle was helping people fix their computers, and then helping businesses to back up their computers. And I would get a contract from a company to come in once a week and make sure their backups were working and fix anything that was broken in their business. And that worked really well for me for a little while. And then I learned to be a programmer, a computer programmer over time by taking classes at night at one of the universities and then taking some classes online. And I realized that I could create programs that I could sell. I could make them once and then sell them many, many times to businesses, to individuals. But I realized that I liked selling software to businesses because they spend a little bit more money than individuals. And usually there's less support because you're supporting maybe one person at the company and then they're managing everything else there. And so I started building software that I could sell to businesses. The first project that I did it while I still had a full-time job. I got approval from my boss's boss and everyone at that company because I was building software that wasn't anything that was competing with them. And then I built this software that back then we would ship CDs, a CD-ROM of the software to our clients. And I built this software for independent living centers. They're people who help people have disabilities to remodel their homes so that they're more accessible. So that they might remodel the shower so that you can use a wheelchair and still get into the shower, things like that. So I wrote them software to help them keep track of all of the rules and the regulations here in the United States for modifying a home to be accessible. And then I got a mailing list of all of them in the country that of these independent living centers, and I started sending them flyers every month, telling them about what I'd built and what it cost, and got some good business out of it. That led me to believe that I could help that group of people and build other products for them. In fact, I think our first 3 products were for that audience. So, and I still have products for that audience that my company today makes and maintains and sells.
Oh, awesome. So you somehow created the niche for that market then. Okay, so that was your very first venture as an adult computer programmer.
Yeah.
Okay. I'm curious also, going back to what you were saying, you said that you're actually still employed when you were building that system, right?
I was, yeah, because it wasn't a conflict for my current employer, and they encouraged people to work with smaller businesses that needed help, to give back to the community.
Do you provide that counsel as well to technology people like you to do that?
I would. I like to see businesses that start up where everyone still keeps their job but works on the business on the side. I think I was telling you, Philip, last week about a business that I discovered here in my town, that everyone who works there has another job, but they work together to build a company. And now they've been in business 1 year, and they've decided that some of them can quit their day job and come to work full time to help grow it. And I was just so impressed because they didn't get into debt. They paid for everything up front and stayed solvent. And I think it's a wonderful, wonderful business. Amazingly enough, all they do is they make popcorn, which here in the United States is very inexpensive. It's like maybe rice in the Philippines. And they take this popcorn and they flavor it, different flavorings, and they experiment with different flavors, and then they sell it to businesses to give to their employees, or they sell it to individuals to give as gifts. And it's a great little business.
Wow, that's actually, that makes a lot of sense, to manage your risk if you have, especially if you have good employment and you don't have to jump ship. Because I've heard of people, after reading a book, they are so inspired, and or they hear an entrepreneur talk and they jump ship immediately. So, and and sometimes, I guess more often, it doesn't really work out immediately, and you lose that stream of income.
I helped build a company that failed, where everybody quit their jobs. They were so confident that they would be successful that everybody quit their jobs, and we didn't last more than 6 or 8 months because we weren't ready for that. We didn't have the money for it. Earlier, you'd asked me a question that I wanted to make sure I addressed. This niche that I serve with the independent living centers, they had pain points that weren't being solved by anyone. And I'm a big believer that the primary buying incentive is solving a pain. If you can solve a pain for someone, then they will buy. And if you can find something that's truly bothersome, that really bugs people, then they'll pay you. So you're creating a value by solving a pain point. I think it's one of the most common reasons for people to buy, I think, is pain.
Yeah, and again, that really makes a lot of sense, solving people's problems. But how do you size up if this is well, it's good if you're just doing it for free as a mission cost-oriented individual, right? So, but if you're looking at something for as a business opportunity, how do you size up the pain that if it will turn out to be a good business later on?
That's a really good question. It really depends on the space that you're in. A lot of times you end up needing to do surveys for your target audience. But
Mhm.
again, that depends on the space that you're in.
Mhm.
I'm involved in a startup that we haven't even opened the doors at our first facility. That's in
Mhm.
another 6-7 days.
Mhm.
But in order for us to determine our price and whether or not there was demand, we created surveys. Just 5 or 6 question surveys, because surveys,
Mhm.
people don't have a lot of time. They don't want to fill out a lot of surveys. But in this day and age of the internet, with Facebook, with Instagram, TikTok, you can get in front of people and ask them a question or two of your target audience,
Mhm.
especially with Google and Facebook knowing so much about people. You can say, well, my target audience are men and women between the ages of 35 and 50 who have children in sports.
Mhm.
And then you can send them a survey. And it's not terribly expensive. And that survey can then give you the feedback of, well, are my prices in the right range?
Mhm.
Is my product interesting? Do people want this product?
Mhm.
You can learn a lot from that.
Well, I hope that our listeners today are recognizing the rules of thumb that Rex is already sharing with us. No, I think you can see a rich amount of examples from your example, like the transition from employment to entrepreneurship. That's an example of starting small, thinking big. Not you're ambitious, but at the same time you're managing your risk. And I also like your strategy that you were very upfront with your employer since you were working on a project and they know you're doing it. So I think that's a good example of integrity also before profit. No? So I just wanted to highlight those so we can recognize those opportunities. And of course, problem solving, starting a business, solving problems. So and doing a rough market research before as a measure to size up the market. So I was able to get those learnings from you. So were you able to do a bit of a market research also when you started the program when you targeted the
I
independent
I
living
was
center? Mhm.
I was able to get a meeting with all of the independent living centers in the state of
Mhm.
Utah. They had an annual conference, and I
Mhm.
asked them if I could talk to them for 15 minutes, and they let me. And
Mhm.
I told them, this is what I want to build. And I said, who here is willing to pay for that? And I actually got all of them to pay for it before I built it, which
Wow.
I don't think that happens very often. And I think that was just sort of a magical thing where I knew they needed it. And I knew they needed it so bad they were willing to pay for it up front before I built it, which,
Wow.
you know, maybe the presentation was really awesome. I don't know. I look back on that and I think, how did I convince them to do this? Now, I did not know what it would cost me to build. I ran out of money before I was done, even though they prepaid me. So I had to still work to build it, but I knew they wanted it. I knew they wanted it because they proved it by buying it.
Yeah, absolutely. The money came out.
Yeah,
So there was so much pain there. So, but I'm
yeah.
curious, how did you even get started with that? How did you even, come to
You
that
know,
thought that maybe these people need something?
well, one of them had told me. One of them, I was helping them to make their computers all talk to each other. This
Oh, all
was
right.
this was a long time ago, before the
Uh-huh.
internet, and they were trying to make their computers all share a printer.
Uh-huh.
And I went and I helped them because they were a nonprofit, and our company that I worked for was encouraging us to work for nonprofits and help them.
Mm-hmm.
So I helped them with their computers, and they said, you're a computer guy. Could you build some software that does this? And I said, well, yeah, I could build something like that, but I didn't know what people would pay for it. I didn't know, where to go from there. And they didn't want to pay me to build it just for them because that would have been too expensive.
Yeah.
But that's who I'd ask. I said, can I come to your group, your statewide meeting, and present my idea? And I presented that idea at that meeting, I presented on what I was going to build for them and showed them some pictures of this is what I'd like to build for you. And yeah, I guess even looking back on that, I'm very impressed they believed in me.
Wow. Well, there's a question here from our audience. He's asking, may I know what is your niche or business? What we call
So
this?
that particular niche was for independent living centers. I don't know if they have them in the Philippines. They help people who are handicapped to get training and to get jobs and to live more independently.
Mhm.
So they help them to modify like their kitchen so that they can cook from a wheelchair, or they move their sink down so that they can function in their kitchen.
Mhm.
But there's groups of them throughout the United States, and they have special needs. They're a niche, right? They have special reports they have to give to the state and federal government. They have to have special reports that they give to their donors that donate money to them to help them function.
Yeah.
So
Well, there's a growing service in the Philippines. It's home for the aged. It's becoming more and more. There are more people getting into the business, and it used to be that families wouldn't want to even dare send their parents in their old age to such facilities, but it's becoming more acceptable now. I know that's a little different from assisted living, though.
yeah,
So.
it's a similar space here in the United States. That's actually a very large niche. As the
Mhm.
baby boomers are retiring, more and more of them want to live independently, but they also want to have medical care. So
Mhm.
they have businesses that are starting around here that they'll have maybe 200 apartments, but they'll have a doctor and a nurse and other people always there 24 hours a day, so that they can feel more comfortable living in this environment.
Yeah, sure. Well, I wanted to go back to how you discovered the opportunity. I think there's an important principle to be learned there, because you were volunteering your services. You were
Yeah,
serving others, no? And that allowed you to stumble upon a business opportunity, a problem, a common pain point that these businesses are having. So, and I heard that from many entrepreneurs,
yeah.
as they are serving others, as they are helping even for free, they come upon. I think that's what the way the Lord bless you as well, huh?
I think it's very common. I do. I think it's very common. If you're doing service, if you're helping other people, you find opportunities, especially
Mhm.
if you're doing service in something you enjoy doing and that you're
Mhm.
good at it, because
Mhm.
that's important. When you build a business, you want to enjoy it and you want to be good at it.
Uh-huh.
If you're good at something that you don't enjoy, you don't want to make a business out of it because you'll always be unhappy. But
Uh-huh.
if you enjoy it and you're good at it and you're able to serve other people, opportunities will come. People will
Wow.
say, "Oh, can you do
Yeah.
this?" Or "Do you have a product
Uh,
that does that?" It works out.
Yeah, and there's built-in trust already, right? So
Yeah,
your clients have been seeing you, have been working with you, they owe you,
yeah,
and somehow they reciprocate by giving you business.
yeah,
Awesome. Now let's talk about the challenges. All right. We're interested. I'm sure we all will learn from the challenges that you've had as you journeyed, no, as you traversed your own path towards becoming an entrepreneur. Will you please share with us some of the challenges that you faced and how you
yeah.
overcame?
Yeah, I think one of the challenges that affects everybody, both in their family and in their business, is knowing what it costs to run your family or run your business. Some people call it a budget, but I don't want to imply that it's a budget so much as what does it take to operate? Knowing we call it a burn rate a lot of times in business. What is your burn rate? Meaning, how many dollars or how many pesos have to come into the company to function, to exist. That's covering all of your costs that might include rent and phones and just covering everything, right? Knowing that number is critical because you have to target something that's probably 20% higher in order to truly be successful. Because things will happen and you won't make you won't make every deal that you expect.
Mhm.
One of the most painful lessons I learned, I'd hired a new person out of college to help with our budgeting and keeping our company's finances. And she was targeting break even. Her goals were all about break even. So she knew what it cost to run the company, but she didn't put in a margin, a success profit. And and so we kept missing our numbers because we were only shooting for just barely break even.
Mm.
And it really hurt us. By the time we realized that we had set our goals too low, um, we we were in trouble. We actually had to let some people go, just to survive as a business, so that the rest of us could continue on. And that was very painful. That was extremely painful to have to let people go. So knowing how much it costs to run when it's the, the leanest number, so you know that you need to target, I would say at least 20% above that.
Mhm. Yeah. I
Um,
remember I remember my dad when he was small entrepreneur, my dad, and he said when you start a business, you have to have triple the resources that you thought you needed. So he's even more aggressive or conservative, I
yeah.
guess.
Well, and I would go along those same thoughts. It's hire only when the employee will create a return on investment. Because
Mhm.
you can find people that will work a few hours for you and help you with something that you need to solve. But when you say, I'm going to hire an employee, you need to have a clear understanding of the employee is going to cost this much, and you're going to make this much from that. And it's got to be a solid profit, because there's going to be times when the employee won't be able to work. Maybe they got sick. Maybe there's other things like, yeah, I know sometimes, the holidays in all the little towns happen right when you need someone to be at work and they're on
Oh
the
yeah.
holiday. Um, but you need to be able to know that you're going to make enough money from their time and their effort, whatever that's doing in your business, to make sure there's a clear profit. Otherwise, don't hire, because
Mm.
once you have someone, you're responsible for them.
Mhm. Yeah. So can you talk a little bit about that? I want to understand when it's some people are thinking about hiring. So when is the right time for you?
So I have a formula that's one of my rules of thumb, but that formula states that when I consider a hire, let's say that my burn rate, the amount that it costs to run my company, let's say it's some number like 100,000 pesos. And if I hire this person and they're going to make, I'm just going to make up numbers so it's easier to do the math. Let's say it's 10,000 pesos. So now the price to run my company is 110,000 pesos. So in my rule of thumb is that I need to have 3 times that amount in the bank or in my receivables. So 3 times 110,000 is 330,000. So I would look at what I have in my bank, and I would look at what I have that people owe me that's just current people, because at any given time someone owes you money. And so I'll add that in there, unless they've owed it to me for a long time and I might not get it, right? So only things that they've owed me in the last 30 days that aren't,
Okay.
you know, and I add that together and I say, okay, I have enough money to hire. But if that person is too expensive or I don't have enough cash, then I won't hire. That's personally for me,
Mhm.
because I feel like I'm endangering my business if I hire too fast. And
Mhm.
people might argue that even that is not enough, that you need 6 months, but I personally have always been in businesses that grew a little faster. And
Mhm.
so I just make sure that I got 3 months of what I need to run the company, in my reserves.
Okay. So you're saying is that 3 times the amount of payroll that you
Yeah, if
6 months?
payroll, but I would say so payroll and rent and your normal budget, not
Oh,
budget,
okay.
really, it's your burn rate for the
Oh
company.
yeah.
So that
Uh-huh.
number that represents everything the company needs to run, times that by 3, and then say, okay, do I have enough to hire? Right. So if that number was too low, then I'd say, okay, I need to save up some more before I hire. I need to make sure that I've got some more capital to make sure that I can pay. Because when someone first works for you, they're not going to be profitable right away unless you're really lucky. Let's say it's a salesperson. That first month, they're going to be learning what they're selling. The second month, they might make a sale. But the third month, hopefully they're making 2 or 3 or 4 sales, depending on your product. So that time period between when they started and 60 or 90 days later, you've got to cover that risk. You're the one that has to make that happen. So having that buffer in there gets you through that period.
So it's like 3 to 6 times the operating, I guess for
Yeah.
us, it's operating expenses.
Yes, operating expenses or burn rate. Yeah, 3 to 6 times. If you have that in reserves, then you're able to hire. But you want to take it into account. As soon as you hire someone now, those reserves have to go up because you have more expenses.
Wow. I think that's a very, very good counsel. Thank you for sharing that, Rex. I remember in our previous conversation, you talked about I know pain points that people have. You wanted to share about 6 areas.
So
Talk
yeah,
about
it's
that.
one of my sort of rule of thumb things is the reasons why people buy. And I mentioned pain earlier, but you see people buy for other reasons. Like you might buy insurance for protection, right? You want to be safer. You see people buy like they want to buy that purse that everybody has because they want to be with the crowd. That's called prestige. So all of them start with a P. So there's pain, pleasure, profit, or price, depending on who's talking about it. So on sale now, you've seen that everywhere. On sale now. Some people buy because it's on sale, not because they need it, not because it solves a pain, but because it's on sale. So that's called buying because of price. Prestige, be with the crowd, doing what other people are doing. Protection, making yourself safer or ensuring yourself. Let's see, product. People buy for product, but more often they'll buy for like a promotion. But that's the same as the discount, same as price. So there's usually just the 6: pain, pleasure, profit, prestige, protection, product.
So that's
But
why
I think that if you know why people are buying your product, so if you take your business and you say, the reason someone buys from me is which one of these, right? And if it's prestige to be with the crowd, if it's something like you're selling bracelets and everybody wants one, then you have to be aware of the risks that can happen in that kind of a space. We're having in the United States a little bit of a recession, meaning people are saving more and spending less. In that kind of a setup, people won't spend more money on things that are like prestige. They might cut their budget for having that nice new bracelet or purse or necklace. But pain, if you're taking away something that's bugging them, they'll still usually spend money on it. But yeah, knowing why people buy your product is important to your success.
Yeah.
And
So
sometimes you just ask your customers and say, so why did you buy from me instead of from someone else? And you can learn a lot from that.
asking your customers, understanding the motives of your customers will be very helpful.
Yeah, I had a friend who told me he was competing with another company very closely, head to head. He was always adding a feature, they'd add a feature. You know, they were always competing neck and neck or head to head, however you want to say it. And he called one of his customers and he said, why did you buy from me? And the fellow said, well, because you're open at lunchtime. I was able to call technical support and you were there. And that was the only reason they were buying, was because he answered the phone. So he changed his business model and he opened up earlier and he stayed later, just the phones, so that people could call. And his business took off. It just took off because that was really the only thing people wanted, was someone to be able to call and ask them questions.
And that's
So
another
sometimes it surprises you what your customer's buying.
Yeah. So it's important to listen, to ask and to listen to them. So we cannot just assume that they basically like the product. So there's actually a way to influence our customer by understanding them even more and strategizing to address those things that are important or valuable to our customers. Awesome. Thank you. So I also know that how important is a network in business? Developing that network, having many friends, and developing contacts. Because I'm asking this because I know you're a member of an entrepreneurship network.
Yeah, I am. I'm part of Entrepreneur Organization, which is a global nonprofit that helps entrepreneurs. And there's several chapters in the Philippines. But before I was part of EO, Entrepreneur Organization, I had a group of business owners that we would get together once a month, and we would trade off locations, and we would just help each other. We talk about what problems we had in our business. And there was no money involved or anything, although I think we took turns buying breakfast, for our meetings, because they were always in the morning. And we would just talk about what's working, what's not working. People would talk about an employee they were trying to figure out how to motivate them. Another person was talking about a legal contract that they needed to get signed. It's really been helpful over the years. I remember once getting a text from one of my business friends. He said, "I just got an offer to buy my company. Do you have time for lunch?" And I think 5 or 6 of us had time for lunch that day, and we all met and we looked at what was happening in his business and said, how does this affect things? And in this particular case, it was really complex because he was already trying to sell his business to someone else. And so anyway, it was very complex, but it was good that he had a group of people who could give him some ideas and counsel, just like you do in anything, especially like in the church. We counsel in counsels. In your families, you have counsels. In your business, you need a group of people that you can sit down with and say, what's working for you, and not your competitors, and not they don't have to be in your same space or your same industry. It's amazing to me how helpful it's been to have people who are in completely different industries give me ideas that are based on their expertise. It's just amazing how we get sort of stuck in our own minds, and someone will say, "Well, have you tried this, or have you thought about that?" And it's eye-opening.
And I think that range of experience, that expertise really helps a lot in seeing our business in a different light. Well, absolutely, the church is a great role model, right? So the apostles are there, and they have a diverse background, so they're able to see things differently as the church approaches ambiguous situations, the situations that are new to the church especially. So. Yeah. And so, that's a great counsel. And it's important for us to discuss that because I think for starting entrepreneurs, that's uncommon, especially in the Philippines, for people to gather together with friends and talk about business, their business. How do you overcome that?
I think it's uncommon everywhere, except for, well, there are cultures where it's very common. The Jewish culture is one where they get together, they gather regularly, and they talk business. It's one of the reasons I think that they've been historically very successful in business. But also there's some environments in Africa where people are getting a group of people together, maybe 5 or 6 business owners that guarantee each other's loans. They help each other, and they're responsible for each other, and they really get involved. That's a pretty extreme level to be that committed. But I know that my group right now, there's 7 of us, and they've got my back. They're there. If I have a question or I'm having a problem at work or home or anywhere, they've got my back.
Yeah. So I think in relation to that, another question I have in mind is, being vulnerable. people don't usually want to talk about their business problems or problems that they have financially, I guess, with their business. So
Mm.
how do you deal with that?
Well, about talking vulnerably, or because
Um,
in
because
my group, we did have to develop a level of trust.
Mhm.
Initially, when you first come together, you don't know each other very well, and it does take a little while. One thing that the group that I'm in, entrepreneur organization, they encourage each group to get away for a few days together once a year to grow in trust and to do something together. Like for us this last year, we all went down to Colombia in South America, and we climbed a tall mountain together, and it was great. It was just a wonderful bonding experience and really drew us closer together. And because of that, it's easier for us to be vulnerable in that setting.
uh, so I guess the relationship has transformed from beyond business. It's now a real friendship among the
Yeah,
group, right?
yeah, it
So
is.
Mhm.
When an event happens in one of our families, we're all there for each other.
Uh-huh. That's great. There's a question here. The question is your business applied here in the Philippines? What I mean is, can you hire here? Looking for
Yeah,
virtual
yeah.
assistants
So
freelance.
one of my businesses,
Uh-huh.
the one that does software development, has employees in Dumaguete, down in Mindanao, in Mindanao City, up in Luzon, over in Bohol. I think we're all over the Philippines right now. And then some of my employees there in that business, they have moved to Australia, to the UK or Canada, and they still work for us. We
Wow.
don't really care where people live. So so yeah, so we have Filipinos working really all over the world, working for us, and we tend to we pay them based on where they live, because it is more expensive to live in Canada or in Australia. But we always try to pay fairly so that we don't have high turnover, because we've discovered in our business that training a new person is really one of the most expensive things we can spend money on, and we try to avoid that.
Mhm.
So we hardly ever have turnover. Um, but yeah, that's the way we run our business. I know lots of people who just they get a training manual and they don't worry about the turnover. But for
Uh-huh.
us, we would rather keep the people we have. The average employee at my software company, the average employee's probably been there 5 years,
Mm.
because we have people that have been there much longer and people that
Mm-hmm.
are new.
Mm-hmm. Oh, awesome. So looks like when if someone works for you, they work for life.
Well, we hope so. We try to make it so our number one value in our business is your family will love your job. And we survey the spouses and other members of the family every year. We try to find out, does your
Uh-huh.
family love your job? And if and I know sometimes they wouldn't tell us an honest answer, but what we generally hear is we hear back that they love
Uh-huh.
it, and we see that they love it.
Wow.
It's not a we don't have to guess really, because I mean, if you survey someone in that situation, they might not tell you the truth. Um, so we have to find out other ways and make sure that they do love their job.
Wow. Well, just the fact that you're asking that question says a lot. So there's another question here. After you pitch your idea, did you start working on it alone as a developer, or did you
Yeah.
have someone, a group develop it for you?
Yeah,
So
I started alone, because that rule of having enough funds. I started by myself. The software company, I didn't this so I've had a lot of companies, but the main software company I have is called Q90, and Q90 started in 2003, and we didn't have employees until it was either the end of 2004 or the end of 2005. And what I did was, when I got too busy, I would hire contractors. I would find people who were willing to work hourly, because I couldn't afford to hire them, I thought, until I'd spent a lot of money on contractors and realized I need employees. And I still would start a business that way. Like right now, this company that we're just starting up this next week, we have one employee, everyone else is a contractor. But we're also, well, this is a whole different discussion, and this could be an entirely different podcast, but we're all working for ownership, except for the one that needed a wage. Everyone else is contributing their time into a spreadsheet. You know, they log their time and they say, this is what we're doing, you know, and we'll decide the ownership based on the amount of time and work and effort put into it. And it's very transparent. We're being as open and as honest about everything. Even the one person who needed a paycheck, he's taking only what he needs and the rest he's contributing in for ownership. Because we all feel like if we do it that way, we'll have a great thing when we're done.
Wow. I think that's a great model for compensating people and getting them really engaged in your, you know, in your business. That's awesome.
It came from a book everyone has read it that's involved in this, and it's called Slicing Pie, a P-I-E, like a pie.
Okay,
but it's a model for how to build a company with labor, you know, instead of, and you know, you sometimes still have to have money, but it's how to build a company fairly so that everyone feels good about it. Because I've been involved with so many businesses that by the time you're done building it, people aren't friends and they don't feel like it's fair. But the thing about Slicing Pies, it's very, very fair.
That everyone feels that they have a stake here. And I'm going to benefit in return, of course, if I have a stake, right? So I'm investing in the organization as well.
Yeah.
So there's another follow-up question. What support groups or resources that help you create your software from scratch? Any idea on I guess the question is personal development. How do you keep on growing as a developer and as an entrepreneur?
I personally, I still take classes. There's a lot of free classes available on the internet. Many of the universities of the world are putting out their courses for free, especially in computers. So especially with computers, there's ways to learn computers and practice. There's courses that are available for free, and then practice, right? But that's specific to coding and specific to computers. There's just so much opportunity there. But that's not for everybody, you know. That's not, some people that just doesn't resonate with them. But I do believe that even if it's things like solving a Rubik's Cube or anything, you can learn all these things on the internet. There's so many resources now that people share.
Yeah, that's really, you know, we're blessed. I guess knowledge is being poured out, right? As part of the last days. So
there's a lot of knowledge out there. There's also a lot of that's not good, not knowledge, but
a follow-up question: any risk reduction method for getting your software, preventing your product from being copied by others?
That's a hard one. I've never been able to protect my software, but I've made it unique enough and in a niche enough that I haven't had any competitors try to copy it directly. Because the thing about software is someone might see it and say, I want to build that, but they would have to build it from scratch. They can't really steal it off of, say, the internet. And if your software is complex enough, if it's a large enough solution, then it's too difficult for someone to just go and do that. They would have to have clients also. What I've tried to do is outmarket my competition, talk to my customers, get to know them. My customers are very, very loyal. When we lose a customer, we generally will help them migrate to our competitor. And then we reach out to them every month or two. And we have this thing called the grass is The grass is always greener, guaranteed. And after about 6 months or so of being on our competitor's product, we offer them a free migration to come back to us. And every time they come back, because right around then they realize it isn't as good as they thought it was going to be. That's why we call it the grass is always greener. And so we found that by being the best to our customers, they'll tell us if we're missing something in our software. They'll tell us if we need to do better. If we're not answering the phone or responding, though, they wouldn't talk to us. So we're their friends. In fact, it's fun to go to our national trade show. Every year there's a national trade show for our industry. And people will come to our booth and they just want an autograph from our main customer service lady. They come by and they ask her to sign something for them because she's a rock star to them. She's that person that helped them. I don't think our competitors get that reaction.
I'm sure that's a rare, usually they see that as an adversarial relationship. These people are helping us.
Or they're hiding from their customer. That's not the way it should work.
Yeah, so I think customer service is income. You consider it as a profit generating investment. It's an investment. Wow, that's awesome. I like that idea. Outmarket the competition by being real good friends with your customers. So that's cool. Well, we're about to run out of time as we want to make sure that we keep within what we ask you to do. So how has we want to close this with a little spiritual aspect. So how has the gospel and the church, maybe your mission, help you in your journey as an entrepreneur?
Sure. So I think that sometimes it's a little easier for business owners to have faith, because a business owner, or maybe someone in sales, has the same situation where you can apply faith. Let me give you an example. So someone came and spoke to my ward, and they talked about the blessings that we would receive by increasing our fast offerings. And they encouraged us to double our fast offerings. And they said, you'll receive more blessings from this. Well, I think that's easier for a business owner or a person in sales to apply that faith, because we know that our income can change every month. So I did that. I said, I'm going to do this. I'm going to double my fast offerings. Well, fortunately or unfortunately, I heard that talk 3 times in 1 year. And every time I was like, oh, do I need to double my fast offerings again? And my wife and I, we decided to do that. We hadn't been very generous before. And so we doubled our fast offerings again. And then someone said in church, they said, well, pay your fast offerings. Those 2 meals, they should be meals that you would be serving if the Savior was there. And I thought, wow, that's a little bit of a nicer meal than the meal I was paying fast offerings on. And so we increased our fast offerings. Well, the amazing thing that happened, and we actually charted this in Excel, the amount of fast offerings we were paying and how much our company was making. And it was directly result. You could see it. There was no way to deny it. When we increased our fast offerings, we made more in our business. And every time we did it, we made more. I told my father-in-law this, and I said, this is so amazing to me. And he's like, well, I'm going to try that, because he was a business owner. And he did it. And I talked to him a few months later, and he goes, I can't stop. I can't stop. I need this so badly. I got to keep doing this. And it's like I said, maybe it's easier for business owners and people in sales who know that your income can vary. But I'll tell you what, it's true. You double your fast offerings, you put that out there, and you say, Heavenly Father, I want my business to succeed. I'm willing to give. Will you bless my business? Help me, inspire me to help my customers to do what they need, so they'll keep buying my product or my service. And it works.
Wow, that's an awesome testimony. And I think our business people who are listening today, I think we're just going to have a witness of an increase in pasta offering in the Philippines in the coming weeks. Well, last question, Rex. I guess some parting words on how has entrepreneurship help you find fulfillment in your life? How has entrepreneurship blessed you?
Well, it's given me options. It's given me ways that I can give back, ways that I feel like I can be more fulfilled. Because I'm very satisfied by service. And I feel like I can do more service because I've been able to be an entrepreneur. I have a little more flexibility in my time. I have a little more flexibility in my finances. And entrepreneurship has given me that. And because I have time and money, I can help. I can do more. I can create more jobs. I can be more involved. And it's one of the reasons I've been so excited about working with ACE is this is a chance for me to serve and to be involved in the entrepreneurial community around the world.
Wow. Well, I think there's a lot of things that we can talk about. We really need to schedule another podcast.
I'd be happy to. Honestly, I think even if we just drill down on how to build a company where everyone is contributing in their time and their what they bring to the table, their skill set. There's so much value to be done in talking to other entrepreneurs.
We'll schedule that definitely, and I'm excited again to talk to you about that. Today has been a treasure of knowledge. Rex, thank you very much for being so generous in sharing your time, but more importantly, I guess your wealth of knowledge. Thank you for being such an entrepreneur who is so grounded in the gospel. Your testimony about fast offering is just remarkable. So that just inspired me, and I'm sure it inspired everyone who's viewing this and those who will be viewing this in the future. So you should wait and anticipate our next invitation. They're looking for your website and social media account. Can you share that?
Yeah. So Q90.com is my software business. And then my the new thing I'm starting up is NeuroBounce. That's NEURO Bounce BOUNCE.com. We help athletes to jump higher. Basketball players, volleyball players. I've been involved in a lot of businesses. Those I'm also involved in Strum right now, STRUMN.com. We help artists to get into venues and venues to find artists to play guitar, play piano, sing. I'm also part of Trusted Health, which is a telehealth application, primarily here in the United States for physical therapists and nutritionists. So yeah, and we can send something out later if we need to that has those different things.
Yeah, so diverse.
Well, right. I feel like my job is to create jobs. So
awesome. Well, again, thank you, Rex, and thank you to our viewers and to those who participated and asked questions, who engaged with us. This is recorded, so this will be in Facebook for some time. So we hope, and maybe uploaded to our YouTube channel as well, so for people to view them repeatedly and get the nuggets of wisdom that they will need at different points of stages in their business, I guess. So again, thank you, everyone. So Rex, we'll see you again. So
thanks,
with this, I'd like to end our podcast. Till next time.
Till next time.
Bye.
Bye-bye.